All right,
Okay.
so Jen Stuppy, with you mind if I tell them that you write for? Okay,
Yeah,
with Restoring Ottawa, started the entire book controversy at Grand Haven.
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you just walk us through like what happened to make you aware of what was going on?
Okay, so I'd already started the Grand Haven Conservative Parent page a few years before that, so they already knew who I was. So people in the community knew who I was because of that. In 2019, a reading specialist reached out to me, and she said, hey, there's a lot of books that were recently brought into the school. A lot of them are sexually explicit. I feel really uncomfortable with these books, giving them to kids without parents knowing about it. I think if I say something, I'll get fired. She said, do you mind saying something, because I have the platform at the Facebook page. I said, maybe, sure, let me look and see what you have. So she gives me a list of books, and I'm going through the list of books. Some of them were marked sexually explicit, and that's just stuff I just kind of wondered about. So there's one in my kids' 5th and 6th grade school. I was at White Pines Middle School. And I ordered the book on Amazon. I read the book, and it was about, it says at the top, a romantic comedy with an Armenian flair, right? So I'm like, okay, it's like a fun book. And the book is about a 17-year-old boy getting sexual with a 14-year-old boy. He's trying to unbutton his pants. He's trying to give him oral sex or anal sex. There's like scenes of them making out naked in a dressing room, kind of like heavy erotic stuff.
Yeah.
They're talking about which teachers they want to bang. Just a lot of inappropriate stuff for 5th and 6th graders. So I was shocked reading it that they would have this available for 5th and 6th graders without their parents knowing about it, so I could see what she was saying. But I thought about it, and I thought, some parents might want their kids to read this. Mm-hmm. I don't. Or at least not without me not knowing about it, so I could talk to my kids after. So realizing this specific book had gay characters in it, I called a good friend of mine, Jody. She's a lesbian, she's married, and I said, listen, I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, you're a Democrat, you're a lesbian, let's just talk this through. Let me know what you think. We went through some of this stuff, and she said that's so inappropriate. Absolutely not. It doesn't represent gay characters. So I thought, okay, now I'm going to go to the school board, and my friend understands this. This isn't like a left-right issue. Like, we know you just don't give kinky books to kids without their parents knowing. That's a weird thing to do. So I go to the school board. I walk through. I got this list. I don't tell them who gave it to me. And I just say, I thought I'd go through some of the things in the book. I'm reading it. They're embarrassed because I'm reading it out loud. And then I say, it doesn't matter if it's gay or straight. Can you notify parents and ask for parental consent? And that was the end. I was the only person at that board meeting. 4 days later, Jared Kramer goes to the Grand Haven Tribune, and he writes an opinion piece saying that I went to the school board and I asked for all LGBTQ books to be locked up and banned, and that I would be responsible for the future suicide of LGBTQ youth. And that was the narrative that went out. So that started getting circulated, and that kind of became the narrative that went out there. I talked to my kids about the books, and I said, do you guys ever get anything that you feel uncomfortable reading? And my 6th grade son said, yeah, I have something right now my teacher gave me. Then I realized that the teachers were also getting books. They have their own libraries, so the teachers were giving the kids books that you never know, that you don't see it in the Destiny system. So I said, okay, what's the book? He goes to his room, he gets his book, comes back, he's got his teacher's name on the side of the book, and he opens to this page, and the book is about an adult male kidnapping a 16-year-old girl. He puts her in his basement, and then there's a scene where he's pulling her shirt up, her breast is exposed, he's cupping her breast, he's got his tongue down her throat. It's gets kind of, there's some sexual violence in it. She gets a piece of metal, she slashes his face open with it. He yells, you B, and all this stuff, this is pretty heavy duty stuff for a 6th grader, again, without my knowledge. So I'm like, okay, there's a problem. So I go to another school board meeting, and
Now, is the teacher that gave that to him still there?
she's still there. But let me. So
Okay.
I go
Okay.
and talk to her, and she says she knew what I was doing from the first book, and she totally backed me. She's like, I didn't even know that was in the book. She apologized to me.
Okay.
And then she backed me up in what I was doing. So I don't tell people who she was,
That's totally fine.
because, and I like to protect people with that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I go to the school board meeting and I just explain the situation to them. Again, there's a problem here. These kids are getting heavy duty reading material and we don't know about it. So my kids, like, they just read like a rape scene. They can't say the F word, they can't say the B word. In school they have all this junk in their head,
Yeah.
rattling around. There's no counselor, there's no parent, nobody knows about it because nobody ever told me. Nothing happens again. And I made one last pitch at a school board meeting, the third time, and nothing has happened. They ended up telling me that I could tell them what books my kids couldn't read. So I was like, okay, what books do we have that are like, I don't know all your books that you have that are sexually explicit. I could tell them what genres my kids couldn't read. So I was like, do you have a genre for sexually explicit books? They don't. Like, they span different genres. Or I could keep my kids from the library altogether. So they have just refused to let us know what's sexually explicit.
So
That's been the problem.
rather than accommodating you with a rating system, they just said your children won't have access to the library.
Right.
That seems kind of exclusive.
So it does. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
now, like, if I go to, I've been to other board meetings, and because the narrative has been twisted, they imply motive. I hate gay people. That's what they like to say. My whole motive has nothing to do with the sexually explicit stuff. You just want to repress LGBTQ kids. It doesn't matter how many times I say, I don't care if it's an LGBTQ book or not. That doesn't matter if it's sexually explicit. Like, there's some books that you could write that aren't sexually explicit that have gay characters. That'd be great. That's a good representation of a gay character in a book for
Yeah.
kids, in my opinion. But they kind of make it sound like they're not sexually explicit. They're just books with gay characters. It's just not true. That's the problem. So yeah, I sat in other board meetings where, like, they have students come in and teachers, and they're like, you know, your kids don't have to be here. Like, take your kids out of school. So it doesn't feel very inclusive for families that are trying to parent their kids and know what's going on with their kids and what kind of content their kids are getting. So I did pull my kids from school. We homeschooled for 2 years. I've never homeschooled. I was a public school kid. It was a good experience, and now we school choice to a different district. Because I could not, in good conscience, leave my kids in that school district.
Yeah, absolutely understand that. Now, I love when they turn that on.
Yeah, espresso's on.
Yes. So we'll give it a second. I'll kind of stall a little bit while they're doing that. So have you been active at all with the Grand Haven School Board at this point, or?
A little bit. So, like, I pulled my kids up for 2 years. I was busy homeschooling. I sort of checked out. And then I just was curious, and I went to a meeting. There was more parents going, and they were like, we need to do something. There's some problems here. And I'm like, hey, I have some experience. When I came in, I think in 2016, my story goes back to, okay, I have 2 kids that have graduated from Grand Haven. And then I have 2 kids that are still school age, that are still in public school.
Okay.
When my now 22-year-old was like 15 or 16, he started the Young Republicans Club at the school. There was like 3 kids that had a really hard time finding a teacher who would sponsor them.
Yeah, I bet.
And they were going around the neighborhood, stumping for a Republican candidate, and he ran into a teacher he had in middle school, and he's like, hey, how's it going? The guys are good, and everything was fine. And then he showed him his flyer, and he got really agitated, the teacher. And he goes, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm a Republican. I'm just stumping for the candidate. And his teacher said, well, I hate Republicans. He's like, oh, okay. He goes, I hate Republicans so much. I have a daughter. I would rather have her date a Satan worshiper than a Republican. And my kid's like, okay, well, nice to see you. And then he kind of went on his way. Came home, told me the story, and I was like, what a dumb teacher. That's ridiculous. Didn't really say anything about it, just it's a one-off thing, right? That school year, they were trying to bring in a speaker by the name of Calvin Terrell. I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
I have heard of him.
Okay.
Like I've heard a few of his speeches.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I see that they're bringing in this guy, Calvin Terrell, to train up our high school and middle school youth. And I started looking, like, who's Calvin Terrell? And he's easy to find. You can go to his social media. He's got, like, a business page on Facebook. And everything he writes is left-wing. Cops and firefighters are paramilitary white supremacists. And I'm like, his whole thing is about white privilege, implicit bias.
And this was during the school day, right? This wasn't for a club? It was
an assembly. Yeah, this is like all the kids go to this assembly. They actually, yeah.
So that was Mary Jane Evink that arranged that?
So he was coming in under the guise of anti-bullying. And I'm like, this guy's whole gig is like, he's like pure CRT leftist stuff. So I was a little like, I take screenshots of all his stuff on his social media, and I'm like blasting it out, like, hey, this guy's coming to train our kids at the high school and middle school. Parents are somewhat alarmed because of all his rhetoric. So that gets circulated. That sets the school off, and they're upset. Like, they want this guy to come. They don't want us to know all this stuff about him, so they're like going back and forth with me and the parents about that. Then Mary Jane Evink sent an email to, I think it was somebody had a middle schooler. They said their teacher read this email to them that said, all the stuff that your parents are saying about this speaker isn't true. And it was true. And so that was odd. So I called the school, and she's like, I talked to the secretary, she's like, well, I hope they read that. And it goes up to Mary Jane Evink, and she said everything's lies. None of the stuff is true that parents are saying about the speaker. I went in and I sat with her, and she told me that his social media was hacked by Russian bots, and that's why it was all fake stuff. But it wasn't, like, it went back here. She still says the same stuff now.
Yeah.
But they were upset because parents were calling their kids out of the assembly. And then back to my kid. When that happened, that teacher came to the high school, found my son in his classroom, and he said, you're going to go to that assembly, right? Because all these parents are, like, calling their kids out. And my son goes, I don't know, maybe, why? And he said, well, you're the Republican, you of all people need to make sure you go to that assembly, and calls him out in front of all his peers sitting in class with him. So then I'm like, okay, this has gone too far, right? This teacher's abusing his power. He's trying to embarrass you for you being a Republican. He went too far this summer. I didn't say anything about it. So I mentioned it to Mary Jane Evink. She tells me I'm a liar. Then I did a FOIA later. I guess she went to the teacher, asked him, he fessed up to it, and I ended up getting a call from the superintendent at the time, Andy Engel, and I said, look, I understand, like, we're politically divided right now as a nation. Maybe just train your teachers on either side. Just don't say stuff like that to students. Just don't use your authority to make your students feel bad because they think differently than you do.
Yeah.
They never did that. He said, like, what do you want, an apology from us? I'm like, no, I'm not going to force an apology. It's not really a genuine apology. I'm not going to make you apologize to me. That's ridiculous.
Right.
I said, maybe just train them differently to do that. Because you have people leaving the school. And, like, I talked to a lot of people. There's a lot of people pulling their kids to homeschool them, to pay for private school. And he said he could care less. The numbers were the same. It didn't matter to him. And that was the end of that. So that's when I started the Facebook page for parents, just to kind of keep track of what was going on there. And then I started hearing, like, tons of stories from parents in the community that had kids in the district, and I was like, there's, like, a lot of stuff going on here. And that led right into the books and right into meeting some of the other parents that came on board, I think in like 2020, they had no idea about the book issue. So I had like a history of stuff that had been going on previous to them coming in 2020.
So, do you think that the whole everybody being sent home for COVID and everything, do you think that brought to light more of what was going on?
100%.
Yeah. So at that point, you saw a bunch of parents kind of jumping out into what you were doing then.
Yeah, because you could hear what the kids were learning.
Yeah.
So, like, my kids were home, and I hear some of this stuff. They had one teacher that had them so freaked out about climate change. My kids wouldn't eat tuna fish because their teacher convinced them that all the tuna was all the fish were almost gone out of the ocean. So I'm like, look, buddy, this can of tuna fish is 79 cents or something called supply and demand. If this is like the last tuna in the ocean, you're not going to be able to buy a can of tuna fish for 79 cents.
Right.
So we used it as like learning opportunities. Then we decided, because you start hearing the curriculum, and I was like, I think we could do better than this. So we decided we're going to homeschool the next year. So my 6th grader is sitting on Zoom with his classroom, and he says to the teacher, we're going to homeschool next year. And his teacher goes, well, that's sad. And he goes, no, it's okay, I'm still going to play football. And she goes, no, you're not. And he goes, yeah, I am, I'm still going to play football. And she says, no, you can't. You can't do anything. You're going to be a homeschool kid. You can't do anything if you're a homeschool kid. And my 6th grader says, yeah, we can. We still pay taxes. Good job, buddy.
Yes.
That's the right thing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
He did end up playing football, but we had to drive to Allendale because Grand Haven let them play football for their school, so we went to a different school to play.
Okay. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. More parents need to start doing that.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be a teacher next year.
Nice.
And
awesome.
yeah, I am so sick of everything that's going on in our education system and teachers.
Yeah. It's really frustrating to be a parent right now.
Oh, yeah, I bet. And you've got, I don't know if you've seen any of the Department of Education stuff coming out. Yeah, you write for Restoring Ottawa, so all that stuff is kind of scary too. Teachers being told, don't tell parents about this. It's crazy. So was that one time with the Tribune the only instance of you being in the media in a negative way, or did other outlets pick that up?
So, gosh, I don't even know. Like, sometime in this whole period, the book period, Jared Kramer had called WZZM to interview him because he would, like, come to board meetings and say, like, these book banning, religious zealot parents are trying to ban To Kill a Mockingbird. And they always make up, like, books that we've never asked them to ban, which is ridiculous.
Of course.
Captain Underpants, I think, is another one. Just, like, ridiculous things because they don't want to tell you what the real books are because then people can look at them. So, WZZM called me and they wanted to interview me, and I was like, I just get nervous with stuff like that because I don't know, like, where they're coming from. I don't know if it's set up. So, they're like, well, it's going to look unfair because we interviewed him. So they came and interviewed me. We go through this, I don't know, probably, I was there for probably 20 minutes. And then when I watched it, they just pull out one piece. So it was that they gave me options, that I could give them a genre that my kid could read, or tell them what books my kids couldn't read, and that's what goes to the press. And then people read that and they go, well, they gave you options. Like, you can tell them what books your kids can't read. But nobody thinks through the next step of, like, what that actually looks like as a parent. Yeah. When you have 4 kids in the district, my kids read probably 4 books a week. They're big readers. So I literally have to read. I have to go in their Destiny system. I have to read every book. They're not telling me what books are sexually explicit. And if you have 4 kids getting books every week, like, I'm pretty busy reading every book while they have the book. And that doesn't include the books that are outside the system that they're getting in the classrooms from the teachers.
Of course.
Like my son got. So, I think that kind of led to, like, you're just a bad parent. You don't know what your kids are reading. They gave you a way to look at what your kids are reading, and you're just a bad parent for not doing it. So.
Yeah. Okay, so WZZM too. I've caught them misrepresenting things other times too. So, it's unfortunate we don't have a media that
Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, it gives both sides of the story.
Yeah. I think what's most frustrating for us is that we don't get paid to write for the blog that we're keeping. We've paid a lot of money to do FOIAs. We write a lot of stuff. We document stuff. And I got a call from the Tribune last week for a comment, and I'm like, "Do you read the blog?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Did you go to school for journalism?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Be a journalist then.
Yeah.
Do your job. Like, I'm doing your job. We're doing your job right now. We did all the work for you. You can just go to our blog and take some stuff and investigate it and print it instead of just getting one comment. You want like one sentence from me. We've written about everything already, but they don't report any of that stuff. So
yeah, that's what I've found is
it's frustrating.
Yep, it very much is, and they have. It seems almost like they all have a left-wing bent too, which
I don't know if they're just lazy and they don't want to do the work. I don't know what their motive is behind it. I don't want to imply a motive to them, but it seems like they don't want to do their jobs as journalists.
Absolutely. And I've been through a lot of Grand Valley's education program. If their journalism program is anything like their education program, then it's not great.
Okay.
It's unfortunate the direction our colleges are going. So speaking of that, have any of your kids gone to college, or are you planning on sending them to college? Or
so my one of my kids just graduated from Grand Valley.
Okay, awesome.
And he was it's funny because I door knock now for the candidates.
Yeah.
And the kids that graduated in his class are like huge supporters because they lived through the same experience that he did, and they know what it's like there.
Yeah.
So they're excited to see change. So
now, what are you talking about there? Door knocking for who?
For Thomas Extra, Tommy Van Hill, and Roger,
so,
the three dads running for school board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you interviewed them.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've just been door knocking, trying to get the word out about those guys because it's a nonpartisan election, so you actually have to know their names and what they're all about.
Yeah.
My kid just graduated, but before he went to college, he was like, he's a big self-study person. Like he didn't party a lot. He would sit at home and read books about the Federal Reserve and markets and study markets and do all that stuff. So he didn't want to go to college because he was looking at the courses he had to take. He's like, it's all BS courses anyways. Like, I'm not going to learn. It's going to cost me a lot of money.
Smart kid.
He is, but I come from, like, my family, you go to college. That's just what you do. That's how I grew up. I'm from Detroit. I'm from a Jewish family.
Okay.
We're very pro-education. So, like, I just wasn't there yet. In my head, I'm like, you have to go, especially for finance. Like, you have to have that on your resume or you're not going to get a job. So I made him go to school. And he did, and he's doing good, but I mean, he knows it's just something you have to put on a resume.
Yes.
And I think a lot of what he learned, he just had to self-study. I mean, there's things with time management and working with people. You know, there's some things that he gained, but yeah, it costs money.
Yeah, I wouldn't say college is a total waste. I just think it's way too expensive for the experience that you get. So yeah, for sure.
I agree.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you have two more kids in school, is that correct? And they're still not going to Grand Haven?
No.
Any plans to send them? You won't send them back at all?
If I see change there, I would consider sending them back. But right now, I looked at it and I really felt like I could not, in good conscience, send them there.
Okay.
Everything that I knew.
Is the teacher that was heckling your child still there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, in the FOIA, they blamed my son, and they told the teacher that they loved him. He didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
And they gave him, if I expected or demanded an apology, like a way that maybe he could apologize.
Okay.
And the grammar was terrible in that. When I read it, I was like, I can't believe these people are in charge of my kid's education. That's scary to me.
Yeah,
so,
I understand. I've read through some of those emails too, and yeah, they're interesting. Would you mind sharing the teacher's name? If not, don't feel bad. I will find it.
I won't.
Okay.
Just because the way people are right now, I don't want anyone, I just don't want that teacher to receive hate mail or anything from anybody either.
Okay.
Because they shared his name.
Yeah, understandable. You don't mind if I release it if I find it though?
That's up to you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect, yeah. So, have you had any interaction with some of the other board members that are running right now? Carl Schroeder, Mark, what is it, Eichenholt, and
Eichel. And Nicole.
And Nicole
right?
Stack, yep.
Okay, so they've never responded to me.
Okay.
Like, ever. Like, I went to 3 school board meetings. You leave your email, your phone number. The superintendent called me, and I had that conversation with him. I've sent other emails to them because they've told us that they don't teach CRT, but I hear otherwise from students and parents. Mm-hmm. I think 2 days before the superintendent emailed me this saying that they didn't teach any CRT, his curriculum director was on video on a CRT town hall talking about leveraging her position. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
So they just sort of deny everything. But he's the only one that's ever responded to me.
The superintendent?
The superintendent.
Okay.
The ex-superintendent, the one that stepped down, and then the new one. I think they sent me 2 emails in response to my email to him.
Okay.
Other than that, you just talk, you give your comments, and I really try to do a good job to make them understand and be reasonable and come up with the most reasonable solution, which was just notifying parents and asking for parental consent for all sexually explicit books, and you just get, like, they're just a wall. You just get blank stares.
Yeah.
Every time.
So when you go to the school board meetings and stuff like that, very often the school board, and I think Grand Haven School Board in particular, has characterized people that talk there as being aggressive or angry or anything like that. Is there anything like in your demeanor that they could have interpreted as aggressive or angry, like frustration or anything like that, or were you pretty composed?
I'm a pretty composed person. I think by probably my 4th meeting, I was annoyed because Mary Jane works with the students for the Buck's Blade, and so they put the messaging on the Buck's Blade, and they had like a cartoon of me sort of blocking the school, like the big book banner.
And that's the school paper?
That's the school paper.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I just asked, like, why are you're allowing this? Like, I'm a parent in the district asking you just to give me consent for sexually explicit books. Why are you letting kids disparage me in your paper? Because I think they have a teacher that overlooks all that stuff.
They sure do.
So I was annoyed by that.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm a pretty composed person. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of, I don't really see, like, I read that in the paper. There's a boisterous, aggressive crowd. I've seen parents come up, give their comments, be very respectful. I've seen Roger, who I think is brilliant, and he writes really smart stuff, but when he gets up, he's very meek, and he doesn't speak loud enough, and I'm like, you need to speak up.
Yes.
I can't understand you because you talk so quiet.
I had that experience with talking on the phone with him.
Yeah, he's really, he's really a meek guy, but he's a really smart guy. And the same with the other parents. I just really haven't heard. I thought they were respectful. I've heard, I think it was Carl or John, beat the gavel at parents.
Sounds about like Carl.
And tell them to quiet down.
Yeah.
I think probably the most boisterous was during like the masking stuff, because my kids weren't in school at that point. Mm-hmm. But they, like, you're sitting there with the board not wearing a mask, and the parents are frustrated because your kids are still masked, they're not playing, there's all these issues going on. So the parents were a little more engaged, I guess you would say. Like, if they weren't giving comments, you could hear them, like they were a little more engaged as an audience, I would say.
Now, at that point, were the parents having to wear masks when they came into the school board meeting, or the school board meeting was totally unmasked?
Everything was by choice.
Okay.
Except for school.
Okay.
So the board members at those meetings were not wearing masks either, while they were making a decision that everybody's kids had to wear masks. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that article in Restoring Ottawa, and that's going to be one of the things that I talk about probably this week at some point. Yeah, because that's pretty. I mean, you've seen that a lot, but
Yeah.
rarely so blatant. I mean, even Gretchen Whitmer was trying to sneak around and hide the fact that she wasn't in a mask. But,
Right.
I mean, it's interesting that the entire board was unmasked while saying that children must be masked. So, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of hypocrisy in the world right now in regards
absolutely.
to stuff like that. But the funniest thing, I tried to get a petition right before COVID happened for parents to go, yeah, we want to give consent if there's sexually explicit stuff, and I just got smeared on. I put it on Grand Haven Forum. We have 50,000 people on there, and I was getting called every name in the book. And some people were saying, you're a Christian homophobe, your kids shouldn't even be allowed to go to public school. And I was like, wow, okay. A week later, that happened on a Friday, a week later they shut down the schools, and we all had to homeschool, including all those people. And I thought that was really interesting.
Wow.
Because I'm like, yeah, this is actually better.
Yeah.
So just the timing of it was funny,
Yeah.
to say the least.
That is interesting. That how did that petition go? Did it not go very well, or did you have quite a few people sign it?
Oh gosh, I think we had I don't even remember. We had a few hundred signatures back then, but I feel like when COVID happened. That
Yeah.
was a thing, and everything else seemed very insignificant
Yeah.
to that.
Well, books are blowing up at this point. So I know in Hudsonville they're having school board meetings, and
Yes. That was another God thing, because it just sort of went away.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everybody caught on to everything that was going on. So
Yes.
that was really interesting, because it wasn't just Grand Haven they were bringing these books into. It was everywhere. It was like a nationwide problem.
Absolutely.
I just got tipped off from someone who worked for the school early.
Yeah. Now I have heard the argument that some of these books, while they're very explicit, not a lot of children are reading them, but a lot of children are on TikTok, where there's a lot of this influence going on. As a parent, do you monitor your children on their social media, their devices, and all that stuff to make sure all that stuff isn't getting in there?
Yeah, so my kids are 15, they still don't have phones.
Okay.
By design. So I've heard that argument before too. People are like, your kids have phones, they can go on Pornhub. That's not true for my kids. But even so, okay, so kids can go out to the street and buy drugs too. They can find somebody. It doesn't mean that teachers give them drugs, because it's wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So if your kids, you should have parameters on your phone. If my kids don't have phones. We block stuff on our television, so that we just don't do a lot of stuff with that. They have Chromebooks from their school, but I think they block porno sites on that too.
Yeah, you can barely do anything with those things.
It just seems like a weak argument to say they could find it outside. That doesn't mean that adults in education should be providing it for them.
Absolutely.
And if they do, I really, again, my position is if they want to have Hustler magazine. So I will give you the respect as a parent to teach your kids in the way that you think is right. I just am asking other people to respect a form and say blanket consent for any sexually explicit material. So if you don't care what the school's giving your kids, they can give your kid Hustler magazine, whatever, just you mark one box at the beginning of the school year and you're good for the year. And for parents that want to know, that want to be notified before their kids get heavy-duty stuff, just let them know. Ask their permission first. Mm-hmm. So that is something they can do.
Okay. And that was never taken seriously, I assume?
No.
Okay.
And that was I think that was my petition, actually.
Okay. Perfect. Let's see. I don't know that I have any other questions for you in particular. Is there anything else that you wanted to share, that you want to get out there to the rest of Ottawa County and let them know, this is going on in Grand Haven? Be on the watch for it at your schools.
I come across people and they're like, I'm not for book banning. And I go, I'm so glad you said that to me. Let's talk about this. And I walk them through my story, and I show them the books, and I show them what they're seeing, and they change their mind 95% of the time if they see this stuff. They go, that kitchen. And I think the school knows that, because if the school had to notify and ask for permission, I think that's the fear that they have. Then we would know what they're actually showing the kids.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that an educated adult, like, you've probably seen some of these books.
Oh, absolutely.
Would, like, make a decision to give, like, kinky books to kids. It's just a weird thing that people you just don't believe that would really happen, because it's not a normal thing to do. So to have it happening on such a large scale is strange. And I do understand it's under the guise of DEIB, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Those are all really nice sounding things. And so if you want to be a good person, you hear those are good things, but it's like their brain just quit working, and they're not looking at the content and what that actually looks like for children, how that affects them in the long term. So, yeah, that's it. I would just say take a close look at the issues, pay attention to what's going on in your kids' school, and talk to your kids. That's a big thing. Like, talk to your kids and find out what's really happening in their schools, because there's a lot going on right now. And, yeah, we're tasked with raising our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
Just do your job. Pay attention to your school board members, the guys who are running for school board election. I keep saying to people, there's 3 dads willing to stick their neck out right now for us as a community and for our kids, and they're either really brave or really dumb. I'm trying to figure out which one. Maybe a little bit of both, because it's a really tough election. So
yeah,
that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm just gonna stop the recording. I think we've gotten everything, and I'm gonna put this up.